aha moments or a light bulb moment where you have an idea on how you can do something better, how you can leverage technology to save time or money or a bit of both. And if we really use it to help propel our staff forward and try and use everyone to the fullest of their abilities and eliminate as many manual processes as we can. So today we'll be talking specifically about 4 different areas that have to do with Timberline. They were kind of on the slide before. We're going to talk about some of the things you can do with Inquiry Designer and how that will help your operations teams. After that, we'll look at some Odbc stuff, which is kind of my personal favorite, followed by some third-party solutions that really are just amazing additions to Timberline, Office Connector, and My Assistant. So anyway, let's get started. I want to jump right in, and we're going to just do direct examples. We're going to start with Inquiry Designer. Instead of actually going through the designer and how it works, I thought it would be better to show the end result and what we've done with it. There's a weird sound. I hope that's not my computer. But anyway, I want to start by looking at the inquiry menu and the project management menu. You know, we've had Timberline here so long, I don't remember if it comes with the job overview inquiry or if we've just changed it so much, but that's what I really want to talk about today. If you'll notice, my top 6 inquiries are job overview and then job overview with initials. These bottom 5 are actually for our 5 senior project managers in the company, Chris Campbell, Rick Compton, and some others. These are just great guys. The idea between having these 6 here is that we use security permissions to limit the inquiries on their screens. While I have all 6 and I can start in a view for any senior project manager specific to just their projects, they only see the one that is relevant to them. So Chris Campbell only sees this overview here. And I'm actually going to go ahead and start off with Chris Campbell in his inquiry view. So this is our job overview inquiry. Now I've actually changed my screen resolution to be a little more friendly for the webinar, but I've got a bigger screen and I can kind of see, you know, all this data from one end to another, you know, on one screen. So this list here is all of Chris Campbell's jobs, and up top in the inquiry view, even though we started him here and everybody else, you know, we're not secretive between the teams. We actually share information. You know, he can switch to, I guess Rick Compton doesn't have any projects. You know, he can switch to other project managers and see their workload also, or he can go to the all job view. The thinking here is if we narrow down the focus to what the project managers can see and only what they want to see, they're actually going to use this information as opposed to coming to accounting and asking questions. So each column in this inquiry has what's called column-specific jumping. Some inquiries have column-specific jumps in other modules. If you're familiar with them, it's really a great tool. And what we did is we came in and said, how can we take a project and give every last piece of information that anyone would want to know from one place? And that's what this inquiry is striving to be. Anything that you need to know about this project, you should be able to look up on here within 5 minutes. So we're going to go through some of that now. For any of you that don't know or don't use inquiries that often, the kind of general rule of thumb for navigating is you can double click and stuff, but I'm kind of a keyboard hound. And if you just remember that enter takes you forward and escape takes you backwards, that's all you really need to know. So let's just look at the, I'm using the Timberline sample data here, by the way. So every once in a while I'll run into a screen like you saw Rick Compton didn't have any projects. It's because, you know, it's Timberline sample data. We're not using our company data. So we're actually not working on the Fort Wayne Officers Club. Anyway, I'm going to use the second job on the list as the example for going through this inquiry. And I just want to show you how we've contained all of the information in one place for this project. If you go to the original contract column, for instance, and you hit enter, this actually pulls up the schedule of values for the project. This schedule of values for us is entered in the contract module, and we actually also use this in the billing module to generate our bills. we can use real-time information here to look at any line item on the schedule of values and see what the status is. At this particular point in this job, you can see that with change orders, the revised schedule of value for concrete is $66,850. We've billed almost $57,000 of it, and the owners paid us $55,000. So you can instantly see the status of concrete, and to put it in context where this is useful is when I had a project manager coming to accounting saying, we need to pay our concrete guy and give him some money. We have a strict pay when paid policy here. So if he has the money in from the owner, then absolutely we'll pass it to the subcontractor. Well, if he's asking for, $66,000, we can clearly see that we only have $55,000 to give out to that sub at this time. Now there might be exceptions or other things in our policy, but we can instantly see here, what the standard is and where we are. So again, coming from this screen that we entered in to kind of look at an overview of the schedule of values, you can escape back out to the project level. This project has some pending change orders, and if you hit enter, you can actually go in and see all the change requests that make up what's pending. And from here you can see the change request number, the cost estimate, the price, the markup, and what the status is. Notice that these are all very overdue, and that's because we're using the sample data. So the dates on these are about a year old. I imagine somebody would probably be in trouble in our company if these were sitting out there for a year. So from this view, I believe, and you can also hit enter on the price and zoom in and see what the cost coding is. So, here we only have one line item making up the costing for this change request, but if you have a change request iteming a bunch of things, you would see all of those items here. Maybe if it was changes to finish trades, it might be all over the place and there's a bunch more. But you can escape back out and go down to the next one and hit enter. So you can see that this change request is for mortar, stone, and grout, etc. So you can really pull up this information quickly, and we actually use this in monthly operations meetings or in quick meetings when we're working on a project. And this is great because the project managers can jump on this information, their seniors can jump on the information, and if they don't jump on it and they come into accounting with a question, we can jump on it just as quick rather than running a bunch of reports or going to a bunch of folders. We try and put every piece of information that we can into Timberline so that we use the repository that it is and the reporting capabilities that it has in order to try and quickly answer questions and be nimble on our feet as far as managing our projects. The approved change orders column is the same way. If you go over it and hit enter, this is actually a list of the change orders 1 through 6 on this project, and you can see their status. They're all approved. And I believe if you come over to the price column and you hit enter, now you can see the change requests that comprise the change order. For those of you that use the change order and change request features in project management, you know that a change order can feature a number of change requests. So you have this zoom ability here where you can zoom in the information and zoom into the next level and zoom into the next level. And the idea there is that we're giving the project managers the ability to get information at their fingertips as quickly as possible. So I'm going to escape back out, and I'm back at the project level. Now I'm going to scroll over so you can see what else is here. We also have the estimate column, and when you zoom in on the estimate column, it actually pulls up the entire estimate for this project. It shows the original, pending and approved changes, and then over here we actually have it broken down into categories, and that's important for some of our reporting. Not everybody uses categories to the level that we do, so if you were customizing these inquiries for yourself, the light bulb moment would be, what are we looking at on paper, or what is our process that we're going through, and how can I create these screens that people will utilize, and instead of throwing questions down the hallway, they have answers on their desktop. So that's kind of our goal and how we go about everything here. I'm going to escape back out of the estimate, and this is probably my favorite column, the commitment column. Now, commitment is the default name that Timberline has. We actually have ours changed to be called purchase orders and subcontracts, and essentially most people use commitments for purchase orders and subcontracts. If you hit enter on this column, it gives you a list of all the subcontracts or purchase orders that are on this project. It gives you their number, the date they were issued, the vendor information, the description of services, which we typically tie in some fashion to the schedule of values, so it makes a little, provides information for us. And if you scroll to the right, it gives you all their contract information. So, for instance, you can see Cook's Lumber instantly has a contract of 30 grand. They have an approved change order taking it to 31 grand. They've billed $7,400 a day, and they have had no payments. So if you actually zoom in on all these columns, you can get additional information, such as, since we're here, we've zoomed in from the job to the commitments, and now we're going to zoom in on Cook's Lumber and see that they have 4 invoices that are outstanding. None of them have been paid. You have the invoice number and information about the amount of each invoice. Where this is helpful is the project manager doesn't have to come down to us and say, hey, if you paid Cook's Lumber on this project, they can pull it right up on their screen and see that Cook's Lumber hasn't been paid. Or if you go to somebody like Northwest Concrete that has been paid, you can see where they have 2 invoices that have been fully paid and one invoice that's open. So we're providing them the zoom ability to zoom in on all the information. Now, I know in our data file we can actually zoom in on the approved change orders for the subs. Oh, and it works in here too. Some of the things that you do in your data file, depending on how it's structured, don't work the exact same way in the sample data. So if I hit enter and you see something that doesn't look right, it's probably because we have a bit of a different structure. But in this case, you can see that Cook's Lumber has $659 in change orders, and you can hit enter and zoom in and see that they have a change order for drywall and a change order for wood framing, and you can see those amounts. So again, we're putting the information right on the screen for just about the entire project. And again, the commitments is kind of my favorite because a lot of the questions on our projects, at least being a GC, revolve around making sure that our subcontractors are taken care of. And rather than not having an answer when subs call us, we like to be able to provide that information right away, and this is just one way to do it. So I'm going to escape back out to the project level, and again, the next column is job-to-date costs. So now we've gone through the contract with the schedule values, the estimate, the subcontract commitments, and we're giving job-to-date cost zoomability. And here, job-to-date cost works the same way. When you hit enter, you zoom in, and you can see the job-to-date cost broken down by categories, or you can also look at the totals. And each of these columns is zoom specific. So if you wanted to see specifically what's the equipment cost in demolition, you hit enter on that, and you can actually see what the, based on the fact that there's hours and units, that this is an equipment charge, and you can escape back out of that. And if you go back over to total cost instead of the equipment column, when you hit enter, it gives you all the costs from every category. So we've kind of given our project managers the ability to look at as much or as little information as they want. Some of our project managers just go straight to the totals, and that's how they look at everything. Other project managers really care about their category costs and splitting it out. So we give them the ability to choose how they want to see it, giving them as much or as little information as they want. Okay, so I'm going to escape back out of job-to-date cost. And you can see, by the way, when I hit enter, notice how the name of the spreadsheet changes up here. And some of this is done, in the Inquiry Designer. And there's a lot of other ways to zoom to other information up here. We actually try and keep our project managers away from up here, and we don't even train on this because we want them to use the zoomability and the way that we have it built in. And if there's additional information that they want to see, then we'll try and find ways to work it into the inquiry so that they can find it immediately. So zooming back out to the main level, kind of the last two big zoomabilities is project billings to the owner. And you can hit enter and zoom in on those and immediately see that this had a February, March, and April billing. We haven't billed it in a while, obviously. And you can see the amount of the bills and the payments instantly. And you can see that this billing has a partial payment and an outstanding balance. So again, project managers can see, and we book our payments as they come in on a daily basis. And instead of calling down and saying, hey, have we received this payment yet? Or if accounting is out of the office, they can come in here and look at that information right away in the project. The last column over here, I don't know if you can see it. My webinar thing's in the way on my screen, is submittals. And when you hit enter on the submittals column, oops, I lost my focus here. When you hit in on the submittals column, it pulls you into the submittal log and gives you the sent dates, return dates, and the status of those. So we use these in our operations meetings and in preparing for meetings with our owners and reviewing subs. This is our one-stop shop for information on all of our projects, and we really love it. So anytime that people have new information that they want, we constantly are kind of working stuff in here. And I want to say it's almost always going to be a work in progress because you never can have access to enough information. So this is kind of the type of stuff that we try to do through Inquiry Designer, is we take our inquiries to the next level and make them as thorough as possible. I just want to show a couple other examples real quick of some other inquiries that we use. We have this menu down at the bottom called Accounting Inquiries, and how that actually started is we were making a place to answer all the questions that people kept asking accounting. So people would come and say, well, how come Northwest Lumber isn't paid on this project? And the reason is because maybe they have invoices on hold. We put our invoices on hold here based on maybe expired insurance, unsigned contracts, maybe there's exhibits for the contract that haven't been submitted, or if a project manager puts a subcontractor on hold and asks us not to pay them, we actually use the hold features in accounts payable to accomplish that. And we provide this inquiry for inquiries on hold to our project managers so they can actually come in here and see that these inquiries are on hold. Most of the time they know why they're on hold. If they don't know why, they can come down and ask us. But I don't think I did it in this example, but this is the attachment feature for the invoice. And we typically put our notes in here so that the project manager can click the attachment on any invoice and look and see that it was on hold for insurance or for any other reason. And we also take that attachment, which we treat it kind of as a memo field, and stick it on some of our reports and stuff too. So our project managers have gotten really used to looking there when they see in some of these inquiries what's going on. Another inquiry that we have down here in the accounting inquiries is checks that need lien waivers. And so what this is a list of all the checks that we've cut for subcontractors that are sitting in the drawer that haven't been picked up yet. So a sub can call and say, hey, I'm looking for my payment, and maybe the project manager knows that we cut checks yesterday, and he can come in here and in 2 inquiries really know what's going on. If it's if it's on hold or if it needs a lien waiver, he can tell them, well, hey, you actually have a check sitting in the drawer since 2010, or however long it's been sitting in the drawer, and all you need to do is send us a lien waiver back, and we'll go ahead and release it, or come in and sign it and pick it up. So we're sending this information down the hall instead of having them ask, accounting the question. The final one, actually, this is interesting, is a contract amount inquiry. And maybe you'll notice that this looks a little familiar. This is kind of old. This is a listing of our projects, kind of like the job overview inquiry. And if you hit enter, it brings you into the contract. So the interesting thing is we actually had this as a separate inquiry, and one day we had a light bulb and said, well, why are we making everybody go to this other inquiry to see the contract stuff? Why don't we just have them go to the overview inquiry, and we'll tie that contract information to one of the columns and they can see it from there. So even though the inquiry is still down here, it's kind of a repetitive inquiry because we decided that we're really trying to go with this one-stop shop for information approach. So we do have the contract information, contract amount inquiry down here, but it's really already tied into the overview inquiry, which is where we want everyone to go. So there's a lot of other examples. There's, I hope that you're having a light bulb moment and thinking of a way that you can change some of your inquiries or do some different stuff to make your life easier. We've done a lot of changes, and I won't go through a million of them, but just off the top of my head, I can think that, in our invoice inquiries and accounts payable, we went ahead and put the phone number and the fax number in the initial inquiry to the subcontractors, rather than having to add a column or look it up later. And most of the time when you're in there, if you're on the phone with the sub and you need a lien waiver fax to them or something else, you have the information right there and you're saving yourself time. So that's pretty much it for inquiries and kind of some of the stuff that we've been doing with them. And I'm going to move on, if no one has any questions, to Odbc, which is kind of my favorite subject. So Odbc is actually a Microsoft product, and it's not a Timberline product, though it does come with Timberline. And what Odbc does is it acts like an interpreter. So if you have two people that speak different languages, Odbc is the interpreter in the middle, and it has special drivers that enable it to do that. And Timberline has supplied drivers that enable interpretation between Microsoft Office products and Timberline data. So you can use Excel, or I imagine there might be some other ones out there, but what we use it for is Excel, and we use Excel to read and to provide data, and we also use Access, and the beauty of Access, we'll talk about a little bit later, is that you can actually write data back to Timberline, and it can be a real time saver depending on what you're trying to do. So let's look at some of the Excel examples of what we do here. One of the things that I love about Timberline is how much data is in there. Sometimes I don't love the way that it gives you access to that data. And a good example is when accounts payable is getting invoices in, and there's maybe just a job address, but there's not a job name or a job number, and you know, that can be really frustrating when you have 50 invoices and you're trying to look through Timberline. And while I love the inquiries, it's not easy to look up a job by address in an inquiry. It's just not convenient. And I think the fastest way to do is in Excel. So 4 years ago, what we were doing was we had a report from Report Designer, and we would print it to a text file, and then we would import it into Excel, and then we would format it pretty, and we would send it out to the company once every 2 weeks. Well, the problem with that is the minute you send that out, it's old information. It's already expired. So what we did is we used Odbc to link to Timberline data to give us a dynamically updating table with all of our project information, and we added, you know, some neat features in there, like, do you need to look for a closed job or an open job? You can switch to in progress, and it automatically reaches out to Timberline and changes all this information to be what our in progress projects are. If you're looking for something older, you can change it to closed, and it automatically, I don't know if I'm updating, am I? I didn't see an update. So the nice thing about it is you can you know, change and instantly look. Am I updating now? There we go. So we're giving them the option to look through our projects that are in progress and closed, and then we just add some Excel features on here to take it, you know, really to the next level and polish it up. Like we add the auto sort features in here. So this is live to the day, and if they know they have the address but they're looking for a job and they only want to see jobs in Fairfax, they can do that. Or if they only want to see jobs that are Dennis Richmond's, they can do that. So somebody in accounts payable that's trying to look up job numbers can zoom in on this information really fast. Now the thing I like about it the most is we never have to do this again. We don't have to export the report and then import it into Excel and then format it and send it out. We created this one time, and we saved it on a network drive, and everyone knows the location. We kind of have this folder called, you know, Spreadsheet Tools for All Jobs, and this is one of them. And so anybody can go in here, and when they come in, it asks them for their Timberline username and password, and they supply the username and password, and the minute they do, it updates the sheet. So I never have to update them with the latest job. This is always current information, and it's always relevant, and it takes me out of the equation. Nobody ever comes to me asking for a job number or complaining that they're having a hard time finding a job number or asking me for an updated job list. I remember people used to ask me for updated job lists all the time. It drove me nuts. It wasn't their fault. I mean, they needed the information. But it was just so frustrating to have to do it all the time. So this is kind of the simplest example of what we do with providing information using Odbc. There is another that I really like that most people don't use that often, and we have a master cost code list. So again, rather than printing a report and importing it in here into Excel to find cost codes, you know, I think the operations side knows a lot more cost codes than maybe the accounting side. So this might be helpful to us, but you know, there might be cost codes that they don't know. Maybe they have a legal matter, and that's not a cost code that you use that often. So if you have this automatically linked to Timberline, and you're looking for a cost code, you can easily use Excel's search feature to instantly zoom in on the cost code. So now instead of having people flip through pages looking for cost codes, you have an automatically, dynamically updated list that people can search through. So I know this is kind of a simple example, but let's show you where Odbc can really take it to the next level in Excel. 4 years ago, we had contract status logs that were done by project administrators. And the contract status log was essentially a list of all the subcontractors and suppliers on the job, and with some criteria about them, like whether they had been signed, if they were executed, what the current contract amount was, change orders to date, exhibitees, if we've received the exhibitee. Essentially what an exhibitee is it's our list of secondary, it's our list of secondary vendors which we require in order to issue payments. And if they have insurance. So instead of having all of this information in Excel spreadsheets everywhere, we realized that we already had 50 to 60% of that information inside Timberline. So why were we paying these people to fill out spreadsheets when we could really advance what they're doing and get them working on some more advanced stuff that would give better value back to Scott Long? So we created a contract status log that's linked to Timberline and dynamically updates based on what you type in this cell. So anytime you change the cell and put a new job number in here, it automatically updates the status log with all sorts of information. I blanked out the vendor names just because almost everything else we're looking at is based on the sample data, but I can't. This Odbc link is a little more advanced and complicated, and to switch it over to the sample data would have just been a bit of a headache. So I blanked out the vendor names just for confidentiality, but you can see that there's all sorts of information here that we were maintaining manually before, and that now we maintain automatically from Timberline. And this pulls straight out of the subcontract record in the project management database, and it also looks at the vendor record to determine if they've got a blanket certificate of insurance or if they have a project-specific certificate of insurance. So now we have a one-stop shop for a whole lot of information that was being compiled manually before. And I'll tell you, the other thing I like about this is, again, just like the job list, anytime that you update a spreadsheet, it's instantly out of date. It's old information. Well, this is up-to-the-minute information that updates itself at a flash. And you can kind of see where this might be helpful for you. And again, I don't know your business practices, but if you think to some of the Excel spreadsheets that you're maintaining, or if you have like a project contact directory that you're maintaining in Excel, or if you're doing your submittal logs in Excel because you have a project manager that doesn't do submittals in Timberline or doesn't log into Timberline, I think we all have one or two of those. You can take this data and you can link it in Excel using Odbc, and then you have project managers that are using Timberline, and they don't even know they're using Timberline. So it's kind of the beauty of tricking them. I don't want to say tricking them in a malicious way, but getting them on board with your processes, but working with, you're playing to their strengths, if that makes any sense. So the contract status log is huge here, and where the value is in this is, when the economy tanked several years ago, we really had to start looking at how we could get creative and, how we could do a lot more with a lot less. And I'm sure everybody on this call can relate to that. So we had, 5 project administrators at that time, and they were doing a lot of tasks like this and other things that we've since automated, and we don't have project administrators anymore. It's a tough call to be letting those people go, but when the nature of the business calls for it, you have to do anything you can to stay competitive. So this is some of the stuff that we've done to stay competitive in the industry, and still, I guess the bottom line for us was, how do we do more with less? In other words, we don't want to sacrifice quality and value because we're challenged and have less people to work with. And this is some of the stuff we did. The last example I want to talk about is kind of not on the project side. It's a little bit more on the management side. And so this is a dynamically updating cash report. I've actually gone in and kind of thrown some fictitious numbers in here so that it doesn't show Scott Long information per se, but it kind of shows you how it works anyway. We actually have this link to Timberline, and this is a table that's linked to the cash management table that gives totals on our banks. We actually maintain our bank accounts on a daily basis. We clear checks every single day, and we balance our cash to the penny. And then every single day we send out a cash report to our owners showing how much money is in each account and exactly where we are on a cash balance. And it also shows the checks that have cleared the bank that day. So what we did is we brought this table over here, linked from Timberline using Odbc, and then we made the report over here. And all these are just, you can see they're links to the Timberline data in the table over here. Now this also used to be a manual process, and we would have to go in and update all these fields every single day to do this report, and it was probably a 20-minute process, maybe a half hour. And the piece that took longer was when you scroll down here, we actually show here's the checks that cleared the bank today, and that's the list that we give along with the cash report. So compiling this information in Excel was like this manual data entry process. It's prone to error. Anyone can, fat finger a number and type something wrong, and this could be, cash is very important, especially in today's economy. So it could be disastrous to start providing information that's just completely inaccurate. So what we did is we took away that whole process, and we just linked the report straight to the Timberline data and eliminated it. This process now takes us about 15 seconds. We literally come in, we change the date right here, we go to the Data tab, we click the refresh button, and ask for our Timberline login, and then we attach it to an email and shoot it off. It's literally, the longest part of this process is letting Odbc log into Timberline. It takes about 5 seconds. So again, we've eliminated something that took a half hour before, and we've automated it. And that, I'm sure you can see the value in that. You have employees now that can spend less time doing this manual stuff, and they can spend more time doing stuff that adds value, high value to the company, just using some creative ideas like this. So that's kind of the end of the road as far as what I'm going to show for Excel Odbc. We do some other things, but I don't think you need 100 examples. I think these are some of our best ones, and we're constantly looking at different ways that we can use Odbc to do things. One of the great things that I really like about Odbc is if we're doing reconciliations or if we're trying to search through some data, you can quickly dump information from Timberline in here using Odbc and queries and narrow it down and sort and filter through data. There's just a lot of things you can do with it. It's a great skill to have, and again, it's my favorite. So the one limitation in Excel with Odbc is it's read-only. You can't write information back to Timberline. And I don't know how many people here are writing information back to Timberline, but there are actually some great things that you can do using Microsoft Access that we're going to talk about next. So Microsoft Access kind of works the same way. You can see over here that this is the Timberline table that I've opened. This is dynamically linked to Timberline. So this is live data. Well, an interesting thing is when I was getting ready for this seminar, I was going to show how in project management, we have these inquiries, and they're sorted by senior project manager. But none of the jobs had, these are defined by a field in the job that we have specified who the project manager is. Well, in the sample data, these project managers didn't exist. So rather than going into each job, go into job cost, set up job, type in the job number, go to the field, type in the name, hit save, I literally came in here and I said, Steve Straub is on this job, and this job, and this job. So as fast as that was, I just updated those 3 jobs. Now, if you go and look at, well, let's see, Chris Campbell had 3 or 4 jobs before, and now he has 1. So now if we go back to Chris Campbell's inquiry and look at it, he only has 1 job. So it's literally that fast. And one of the great things about this is when I got here 4.5 years ago, there were large sections of Timberline that we had not implemented, and there were a lot of changes that we made as far as how we sort our data. For instance, we didn't have a sort that specified the senior project manager. We didn't have a sort that specified the superintendent. We wanted to start looking at how we were, how much revenue was coming from different market sectors that we were working in, but we didn't have a feel for that, and the data wasn't in the jobs. Well, if you could imagine going through 2 years of jobs and putting if the market sector was healthcare or religion or educational, etc., going in each job and typing that in and clicking save, I mean, it could take forever. But literally, we did it in about 2 hours. We went back and categorized 3 years of projects in new ways because we wanted to be able to sort that data, and this is where we did it. Now, not every field in Timberline can be written to. You can't just change anything. And if you're, if you have questions about that, I know that if you're not familiar with what can and can't be written, Steve and any of the consultants over at FCA have that information. And how I first discovered this was a light bulb moment, and I don't remember who showed it to me. Maybe it was Jackie or somebody else that was out and said, well, did you know you could update that stuff using Microsoft Access? And I love when somebody puts that light bulb in my head and I start thinking of all the ways that that applies to my company, and it really helped and saved us time. So when my boss came and said, I want to be able to analyze this by market sector, and I knew that we hadn't been entering that information in our job setups, or maybe we were entering it, but it wasn't consistent. The data wasn't strong and garbage in, garbage out. I knew that I could come in here and use Microsoft Access and just update a bunch of stuff. Like, look at all these jobs that don't have states. Well, this job is in Virginia. This job is in Virginia. This job is in Maryland. This job is in Maryland. Literally, I just updated those jobs. So if you have something in Timberline that hasn't been entered consistently, or you have some holes in your data that you want to fill in and really start fleshing it out, this is a place you can do it. Now, when we talk about the contract status log, and we're looking at what the people, I think I closed it. We're talking about the contract status log that we were looking at. There was a lot of the information for that we were not entering in Timberline. We weren't entering the contract signed date. We weren't entering the Exhibit E date. I'm not even sure we were entering the insurance expiration dates. I think it was a manual spreadsheet process. So when we looked at actually trying to go forward and do some of that stuff, we knew the data wasn't in there. This is how we got it in. We were able to go in and mass update vendor insurance and mass update contract sign dates and some other stuff rather than going screen by screen through Timberline. And again, Timberline is a great process, but when you're looking at dynamically changing mass quantities of data, this is where you can do it. You can even use queries. Microsoft Access has some other abilities I won't get into because this really isn't a Microsoft Access seminar, but you can use queries and specify through the query of Microsoft Access, if the city is this, make the state this, and click update, and it'll troll through your data for you and dynamically update, hundreds or even thousands of records at a time. So this is a tool that is just massively undervalued. If you're not using this now to update some of your data, I'd strongly encourage you to look into it, and I hope that there's some aha moments going on as far as people knowing that there's a section of Timberline or something they haven't implemented yet that they really want to. This is just a great way to do it. So that's kind of my spiel on Access. I will say, just real quick, that Access doesn't need to only be used to update Timberline. Access is a true database. You can write full programs inside it, and you can link them with Timberline. I've worked with other companies where there was additional information that they wanted to store that Timberline just didn't provide fields for. Maybe your projects have paint color specifications, or maybe you have, steel panel colors or other stuff, and you want to store that, but you don't want to have two totally separate places of data. You don't want a database of Timberline and a database of paint colors when it's all for one project. So we actually made this database with forms and other stuff, and we linked it to the jobs. So you set the job up one time in Timberline, and then you were able to go and access, and you could track those paint colors, or you could track, a bunch of information about specifications in your project that you might not be tracking anywhere or might be in a spreadsheet. So there's lots of different ways to explore in there, and I encourage you to do so. So that's kind of it for Odbc as far as interacting with Timberline to access data or read and write data. I want to talk next about two sister products that work with Timberline, and we're just getting into some of them. Others we've been using for a long time, and literally the value can't be understated. It's just amazing the things that these products have done for us. The first I'm going to talk about is Office Connector, and we've all, yes.
I have one question I want to offer up here before you move on.
Sure.
Maureen, I unmuted you, but Maureen, your question is you don't have project management, but you do have contract and service management. Can this customization be done with those modules as well? And the answer is the inquiry tools work with everything in Timberline except service, purchasing, and inventory, because those are special format databases. However, Odbc will work with those modules.
Okay.
So you can do things with Excel and Access, like Brent was showing, within the service module. But of course, you can also do that with job costs and contracts and billing and all the other tools that you use.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm glad
again, if anyone else has questions, don't hesitate to either write it in or click on the raise your hand button on your sidebar. And if you raise your hand, I can unmute you and we can have actually a conversation about your question. I have another question. Tom, what's your question? Tom, can you hear me? Tom Page? Well, Tom, I don't know if you have a microphone. If you don't, you can type your question in the little question box, and we can answer it that way.
Anyone can also feel free. I know that we kind of allocated an hour or however long for this. We might run a minute or two over. You can also feel free. I'll be here for questions after the fact, or if anyone wants to, after I'm done, stay on and ask questions specific to your company, or if you have ideas that you're interested in, I'm happy to ask to answer questions kind of about some of the stuff that you're seeing here after the fact too.
And I do want to comment.
Steve has all day.
That's true. One other, we had a few people drop in late, and I just want to mention that if you key in your audio pin, some of you have not done that, and I cannot unmute you if you don't put in your audio pin number. So in the way if you look at your sidebar for go to webinar, it shows you in there what your audio pin is, and to enter it, like a 2-digit number, you enter the pound sign and then the 2-digit number and then the pound sign. So if you do that, then and you want to raise your hand, or we'll open it up for general questions at the end where I'll unmute everyone. But you won't be able to be unmuted unless you put your audio. Okay, so I did have the written question here from Tom. How do you handle cost to complete forecasting? Tom, we're going to get there. That's
that's really good timing, because that's what we're going to talk about right now.
Aha. So we'll hit that right now.
So this is actually brand. Are we ready for me?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually brand new for us. We are in the process of rolling out our whole new cost to complete system. What we did before was, everybody knows, or maybe everybody doesn't know, but what we did before was we had this miscellaneous worksheet screen, and we would enter our cost to complete. We have different views in here. We would enter our cost to complete in here. It's just a nasty process. I'm not a fan of this screen as a big. It just doesn't work for us. But we've been doing it for years and making it work so that we could get our cost to complete information into Timberline. Well, I don't know. At some point we got an update from Timberline, and there was this Office Connector sample that came with it, and I've heard of Office Connector a bunch of times, but I've never really given it much thought until it was in front of me. And one of the things that came with it was this cost projections right back to Timberline. And the minute I saw it, I mean, I just got really, really excited. So this is our version of what came with Office Connector. We've just done some minor tweaks here. It's almost identical. I mean, this almost worked right out of the box for us. And instead of using project management to do our cost to complete, we're using this sheet here that actually pulls information out of Timberline. This is real-time information on this project, and it gets here by just typing your project number in this cell. You type the project number in the cell, it updates the form with all the current information. And then typically anything that we have where the project managers are going to be writing information back to Timberline, we highlight in this yellow color, so we're kind of getting them used to knowing that that's where they're going to put their information. So you can see here you have your cost code and description, the original change orders and revised estimate. This is the revised commitment with change orders as of today. How much of the commitment has been invoiced? I know my titles are a little scrunched up here. The actual job to date cost today, and then this column shows the current cost to complete. And if they haven't made any changes, these two columns will be identical. And then this shows the actual effect of, you know, what's the cost to complete going to do. For instance, this line item is not having any effect on the bottom line because the estimate was 20 grand, and the cost to complete is, you know, essentially the same number. You can see here where we had a budget of 5,050, and current cost to complete is 4,985. So they can see right in the spreadsheet exactly what the effect is. They're picking up 155 on that line, or, you know, obviously a negative number is they're losing. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, I believe you can see an actual total change. So they're actually picking up $1.6 million on this job, and they can see it in the spreadsheet before they've even uploaded it to Timberline. They can see what it looks like. So how this works is they literally are just going to change the numbers in this column to enter their current cost to complete information. And so this line is, you know, $13,000. We're going to say they found out that there was something wrong, or maybe the job's running over, and now it's $15,000. So they're going to change that number there. Maybe insurance, you know, is higher than what they had budgeted, or maybe permits are lower, so they're only going to spend $15,000 on permits. As they update these numbers, right now it's just in the spreadsheet. When they're done, you come over here. This is the Office Connector add-in bar, and there's this button that says Send Data to Timberline. So I come over here and click that button. It says, hey, are you sure you want to do these updates? I say, yes, I'm sure I want to do the updates. And boom, it's done. It kind of gives you a receipt. So for those of you that are paper printers that like to save evidence of your transactions, we are not here. We print everything to file and throw it away, and you know, we don't keep it and try not to burn that paper. But if you wanted to save it, you could save this, and it's in Timberline right now. So it says, hey, we just sent information in. You know, this is kind of nerd language for, we sent information to Timberline. Do you want to update the spreadsheet to show what you just sent? Well, yes, I do. So it re-pulls information down, and it re-updates the sheet. And this is literally dynamic. If you add cost codes tomorrow and you come back to this sheet, the minute you type the job number in, it's going to drop those cost codes in here. If AP enters invoices and there's cost, it's going to drop that in here. When payroll's posted, it's going to drop that in here. And it's literally real time. So when our project managers saw this, normally when we roll out changes, there's resistance. Everybody, I love change, but I don't seem to find that very often. This one, people are fighting over. We actually have 2 project managers that are the guinea pigs and are testing and running this. And it was like the first day, and we did the training, which, you know, you can see it's really not that complicated. That's the beauty of this form. And I think he went back and did his cost to complete, and he was running down the hall bragging about it only took him 6 minutes. And the other project managers are throwing stuff at him and slamming their doors because, you know, in the Timberline sheet, in the miscellaneous worksheets, there isn't as much comprehensive information as what you see here, and the format is cumbersome and hard to use. So this really is a game changer. Now, it's still a work in progress, and one of the things I like about kind of, working this out with our project managers is they have great ideas too. So we're actually in the process of, I don't want to make this too small, I don't know if you can see it. We're actually in the process of now, we're going to link this comments column to a custom field in the category record. That's actually where this information is being written to the category record because we do our cost to complete by category. Not everybody does it by category, but they also have sheets that come with Office Connector that are, I think they're by cost code also. So they kind of have done a lot of the legwork for you. This wasn't a mass production. Anyway, we're going to link this comment column to a field in the category record so that the project manager, when they're doing their cost reporting in here, they can put a note like if there's unexpected permit. So next month, when he comes to do the cost projection, or actually I guess that's backwards because he's making money here, but if he had to mark it up, so you'd say, oh, it's actually going to cost $26,000, and now this line item's a bust, and he can put himself a note. So next month when he comes and he types the job number in here, all his comments are going to drop in here too, and they're like little notes that he's leaving for himself to explain why it was that he did what he did last month. So this was an idea from one of our project managers, and I think it's brilliant. I mean, he's really taken what I think is a simple numbers tool and made it dynamic information with this comment column over here. So that's the next piece that we're going to do, and essentially that's how we do cost to complete now. We have 2 project teams that are doing this, and the other 3 project teams are begging to do it, and we'll probably roll them out and let them start doing it the same way next month. And I'll tell you, it was super simple. We haven't encountered any problems, in the process at all. It works exactly like you'd expect it to work, and as you can see, it's simple and elegant. So this is the beauty of Office Connector, or maybe I should say the difference between Odbc in Excel and Office Connector in Excel is Office Connector provides you some right back to Timberline abilities. And the thing I like about this, especially from my perspective, is, again, I always think of what's in it for me. The project managers that don't use Timberline or aren't as good at using Timberline or don't like to use Timberline, we've got some of those guys here, but they have their projections down to a science in their Excel spreadsheets. So getting them to use this for their projections in Excel is a lot easier than saying, well, you got to put your miscellaneous worksheet, screen in Timberline, because they're already doing this in Excel. They're already they're already comfortable with this product. So we're meeting them at their comfort level, and I'm telling you, it's just genius. I really like it. I'm going to give one other example of Office Connector, and it's kind of not on the project side, but if there's any accountants on the phone, you'll really appreciate this, or maybe the project side will like it too. We also have this AR aging report.
Brent,
yeah.
Brent, before you move to that one, I have a couple of questions.
Okay, good.
While we're on it, first thing, I have one because when you and I were talking yesterday, you mentioned something I thought was really cool. When you start a new project, how you start your cost of completion? Oh,
yeah, that's a really, really good. Thanks for reminding me about that. Okay, so when we start a project here, and I am sure it's the same anywhere, there's always this push to get all this information in Timberline. Now, I'm a fan of having everything in Timberline, but it can take forever. Our reports are very dependent upon this cost to complete. Even at the beginning of the project, when you've entered the estimate, the way our reports work is this information needs to be in here, or it reports profit in, like there's going to be 0 cost. So the project managers would go through, or project engineers, whoever we have do it, and they would enter the entire estimate into Timberline. And then they would have to go into the miscellaneous worksheet screen, and they would have to mirror image the estimate and the cost to complete to show that the job is starting off. So what this sheet allows us to do is highlight the estimate column and copy it. This is awesome. And paste it. Just going to paste the values to keep my color. And upload. And you just made your cost to complete equal to your estimate. So literally that took, 15 minutes of data entry, and depending on the size of the job, it might not be that big of a deal. If you've got a 3 or 4 line item budget, it's not that big of a deal. If you have a 30-page budget, it can be a big deal. Another piece of that is we also have a similar process when we're closing out our job. We do the exact same thing. We need to make the cost at complete equal to the job to date cost. In other words, we want it to reflect that there's no cost coming. And by the time the job is over, project managers have kind of moved on. They're just not interested in that. They already know what the profit's going to be. Some of them will update it and some of them won't. Well, I used to moan and groan about having to do it for them, but I don't anymore, because if I get the project and it's not perfect, I just come in, and again, I highlight the job-to-date cost, and this is real-time information, straight out of Timberline from 5 seconds ago. I highlight that column, come over here, paste the values, and you can instantly see, bottom line, if there's no more cost in this job, we picked up an additional $1.6 million in profit. Click the Write Back to Timberline button. Confirm, yes, I want to write this stuff back to Timberline. And it's instant. It's done. This job, we just closed out the cost to complete on this job in seconds. Instead of having to go line by line by line, because we were able to take Timberline data and put it in Microsoft Excel, you're now giving yourself the ability to use all the tips and tricks that you can use in Excel, like copy-paste. So that's a really good question, Steve.
All right, we have some others here too. One is how do you control the date? Because in miscellaneous worksheets how it assigns a transaction date.
Okay, so that's a really good question. Unfortunately, this works around the date. So there is no date in here. You're actually writing to a bucket, and you're not creating transactions. You actually cannot create transactions for cost to complete from Office Connector or from any other program outside Timberline. It's just not possible. I've been looking for that holy grail for a long time. If it's out there and somebody knows about it, I'd love to know how to write this back with a date. But we're updating a bucket, so there is no way to have date changes. This is as of today. Now, I will say what some of the project managers who have asked the same question, because they want to maybe be able to see changes over time, is they'll write this back into Timberline and do their once a month, and then they'll do save as and keep the sheet so they can actually see what their projection was last month or the month before or the month before. But as of right now, this process doesn't utilize dates. It just updates a bucket, which gives you a current amount, but there is no rollback dating here.
Okay. So the other question is, can you put security on this so they can only enter certain information? Let me, Tani, I'm going to unmute you here. See if I've got that question. Well, I can't unmute you. You haven't entered your audio yet. So can you put security on this so that they can only enter certain information? And I think that's a question of how you design a worksheet. The worksheet is designed where, like this yellow column, that's the only information that gets written. 2 yellow columns, the notes and the cost of completion, are the only 2 fields that get written into the database. So it's all in how you, in Office Connector, all in how you design the spreadsheet.
Right. The only column that gets written back to Timberline in this spreadsheet is this yellow column. All of this data, I believe, like this permits, if I just change this estimate to 50,000 or 500,000, this doesn't go back to Timberline. And I think if I refresh it, it's going to overwrite that cell that I just wrote in and fix it because it knows that that's not. See, it didn't do anything to Timberline, and it refreshed it. When I refresh the worksheet, it changes that number back to what it is. The only column that writes back is yellow. I'll also say this. Nobody saw when I went in because I kind of set all this up ahead of time so that it was all ready. But when you first come into this sheet, you've got to open the Timberline database. Of course, it's not going to ask. I think I'm logged into other sheets, so it's not going to ask me for my password because I'm already logged in. But when you first open this, it actually asks you for your Timberline credentials, and it checks against security. And I do believe that Office Connector even supports record-level security. So, essentially, you're not going to have somebody be able to log into a sheet that might have payroll information in it, and if they don't have access to the payroll master records or the transaction records, the sheet's not going to work for them. It's not going to give it. So your security is your Timberline login, and combine that with how you design the sheet.
Right. So, Connie, I have been able to unmute you. Did that answer your question, or are you asking
Yes,
about this a little bit? Okay.
Thank you.
And by the way, the same goes for Odbc. I know that I popped all of them up and they were already open. Well, before the seminar started, I opened up everything and made sure it was working, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't get here and all of a sudden my login wouldn't work. So I was entering my Timberline login and pretty much everything you've seen so far, and it works with Timberline security. And if it's payroll information and I didn't have access to the payroll transaction files, it wouldn't populate the form for me. And if you don't have a Timberline login, it's not going to populate anything. So
I have two more questions here, Brent.
Sure.
One is, Elizabeth, will Office Connector write data to other modules like billing or PJ?
Yes.
And Elizabeth, I have you unmuted if you need to follow up with anything here. But.
Yeah, Office Connector will write data to any field that Timberline allows writing from outside or external programs. Odbc can write, to specific fields that Timberline allows. There's some fields that Timberline does not allow you to update, and those fields, Office Connector, Odbc, nothing else will update in Timberline. But anything that Timberline allows, you can do from Office Connector or from Odbc.
And I will say, Elizabeth, your question is about billing, and everyone would probably go, wow, could I do my billing worksheet here in Excel? And the answer to that is no, because the billing information is not subject to being written to by Odbc. But if you want to update customer address information, you have to look through what it is you want to update. But Brent is exactly right. There are certain things that Timberline just does not allow you to update with Odbc. Typically, that's financial information backed by transactions. You cannot write any of that information.
Yeah. And now you can. I do know we don't use it yet, and we're looking at it for some of our big bills, like our phone bill, which has just has a million distributions and other things. I do know that Office Connector has some sheets set up where you can actually import invoices in a friendly format. We haven't looked at them yet, but I do know that they're there.
Yeah. Did that answer your question, Elizabeth? Okay. Well, had you unmute, you might not have, if you're on speaker, it shows you're using speaker microphone, and if you don't have a microphone, you can't talk. So. All right, I have one more. Okay, Elizabeth did type yes. Let me unmute you. You have a question? Oh, Tom, I can't unmute you. So, Tom, your question is, I have a couple of questions. My audio is per phone now. So, Tom, if you haven't entered your audio PIN number, you need to enter that so I can unmute you.
Should I move on while we're waiting?
Tom, the audio pin is located in the GoToWebinar sidebar. There's a little box there that when you call in, it shows you your audio pin number.
Steve, maybe you can move on.
Yeah. Okay, let's.
Yeah, we can move on, and I can always circle back to Tom. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for a while if Tom needs to come. But I have a couple things I want to get through real quick, and I know we've run a little over.
Yep.
Let me run through these real quick, and again, if anyone has questions and they want to stay after, I'm certainly happy to answer them. Let me give another quick example of Office Connector and something that we're doing with it, and that's the AR aging report. Somebody's. I think your phone's in your pocket. All right, so this is a AR report that is also out of Office Connector, and it dynamically updates automatically whenever you pull it open. And you can actually even put cutoff dates in here, and it'll filter your report on the cutoff dates. So I know that there is a Crystal report that comes with the receivable module that you can run that shows this exact thing. I just don't think it's as pretty. The other thing that I like about this is we can update this Excel spreadsheet with our current receivables, and we can email it out to the project managers and ask them for comments on anything that's over 60 days old. So just another quick example of something out there. This is something that we're just starting to use, and you'll notice that the comments column is yellow, and the reason for that is we're actually getting to the point now where, because of the idea that someone had on our cost to complete sheet, we're actually going to write our comments back into Timberline so that we can have live dynamic contents on the comments on these invoices that are in there and shared. So we can, moving forward, the next time we update this, the comments from last month will automatically show up here. So it's just kind of another way where we're trying to get all of our information in one place, and a way to manage our cash flow, which right now I'm sure everybody is thinking about. So that's kind of my second example from Office Connector. The Office Connector center here, that I think this one came out of here also, is AR aging by customer. There's all sorts of different stuff in here that comes with it. We've only looked at a couple of them for now, but this is kind of where these ideas came from. I think the cost to complete, yeah. So this is the original cost to complete by category as it was written, that comes with the sample pack. So yeah, you can look through some of these and see what you think about them, and if you want more information, I'm sure that there's a consultant that can help you and kind of point you in the right direction. I know that we ended up looking at the Office Connector at some point because I asked a question on how to do something, and I don't know if it was Jackie or someone else that was like, well, if you tried Office Connector, I think it can do that. And in fact, I think it was the cost to complete. So it's a great tool there. And if I can real quick, I'm going to pass out of this and go on to the last things I know we'll run over. My last favorite thing is My Assistant, and this is a huge value-added add-on software for the Timberline database. Now, what this does is it kind of works like Odbc, but instead of between Excel and Access in Timberline, it goes back and forth between Microsoft Outlook and Timberline. So what it does is it actually can do mail merge type emails with attachments that are specific based on data that's in Timberline. So the first way that we used this was we used to have somebody, after the check run, they would create a lien waiver for each check, and then they would get a fax cover sheet for each check, and then they would go scan it at the fax machine, and they would fax them all, and it was like a 6-hour process. I mean, it took like half our Friday, if not more, to get all these lien waivers sent out after we cut the checks. Now, we created this My Assistant task and notification that automatically sends a lien waiver every time a check is cut until they pick it up. It sends it every night at 6 o'clock. So how this works is it goes into the lien waiver records in Timberline, and it looks for any lien waiver that we haven't marked that's been received back, and it sends out a lien waiver attached using a combination of Timberline data and Crystal reports. So I actually put examples on my desktop to show you what it looks like. So here is our notice that goes out to the subs. Here's the email. I sent this one to myself so you could see it. But it says, hey, job 13234, Anderson Orthopedic, you have a check number 38178 that's been processed in the amount of $230.90. Attached is a lien waiver for your execution. Have the attached lien waiver signed and sent back. We also need lien waivers from suppliers and sorry about that. Suppliers is listed in Exhibit E as noted in your contract. The following are the names you provided. This one doesn't have any names, so they didn't need to provide any. The really cool thing is, attached to it is a PDF, and look at this. It's the lien waiver completely filled out with the check number, the amount, the job, the address, all of our language, date, and the sub information down here. So we're sending them a lien waiver that we know is perfect. There's no data entry errors. It's all generated from Timberline, and there's literally zero work on our end. Once we cut the checks, any check that's been cut that we don't have a lien waiver back from at 6 p.m., the lien waivers go out. So this is the piece that the sub sees, and internally we get notifications also. We get a summary of what went out, and this is what the summary looks like. So I get this every day, or every morning I get to review the one, see this got to me at 6:14 p.m., I get it right about that time every evening, and I get to review it in the morning, and this shows me all of these people have checks in a drawer. This check was cut 9/15. This one I might need to look at because the check was cut August 18th, and it's still in the drawer. So maybe it's a small check and they haven't signed the lien waiver because it's something small, but this allows me to make sure from a management perspective that our subs are taken care of. And in fact, yesterday, after we kind of did a dry run through of this, and I saw that Anderson had this check sitting here that hadn't been picked up, I went ahead and shot an email over there and said, hey, did you know you had a check in the drawer? Come by and get it. So this allows us to send them automated notifications here, and then we can follow up based on the data here to make sure that everybody's taken care of. So our communication with our subs has never been better because of some of this information, and we're getting checks out the door faster than we ever possibly did before, and we're saving hours and hours of labor doing it. So this is just a wonderful tool. Now, I got this list, which is every check in the drawer, but based on the way the notifications are, we actually tell my assistant who to notify, and you'll notice if I come down here, it says also notify, come over here, the project manager, the project engineer, and the senior project manager. So the beauty of this is Timberline actually goes in, and if in the summary notification that the project manager gets is only the jobs that he is working on. So he doesn't need to see, Rick Compton doesn't need to see Rick Mills notices, and Ryan Bradley doesn't need to see so-and-so's notices. So whereas I get a list of like 50, they get a list of who we paid on their job. So the minute I cut checks and send them out to subs, Mike Granby, one of our project managers, gets an email that night that says 11 checks are in the drawer for your subs. So he can send any special notices out to the people that he wants to, reach out to. And also he gets just a quick notification that, hey, accounting's doing their job and they're getting your subs paid. So this is just really great information, and it's a huge time saver. I mean, anybody that's manually typing lien waivers in Word, I mean, at the very least, you should have a Timberline report that's printing them for you. But if you're, I mean, you can just see the value of this. If you add up 6 hours a week and the cost of this package, I want to say our payback just on this one report was less than a year. I mean, it was a super quick payback. Some of the other ones that we also do is we have the owners of the company and the head of HR notified on the first day of the month of people who have anniversaries in that month. So it allows HR to get a quick reminder of maybe somebody has additional vacation because they've reached an anniversary, or maybe our portion of health insurance, if their benefits are changing, she gets a notice. And the owners of the company get a notice so they can reach out and say, hey, thanks for your 10 years of service, etc. So that's just a real quick little notice one. The last one I want to talk about, and I don't have an example here, is a billing notification. When we get final payment on a project, we actually, this is a combination of almost everything that we've talked about here today. We use Microsoft Access, and we go and update a custom field in the subcontract for anyone that we don't have a final invoice for. And then we come in here and we run this task. This one's on demand. Notice it says on demand. That means it only runs when you tell it to. So we get final payment. We come in here and we run this task and we send the notifications. So anyone we don't have a final bill for, it sends in a notification and says, hey, we got final payment from the owner. Send us your final bill and we'll pay you. So rather than having to reach out and make phone calls for anything that's not in the drawer, we're automatically sending these guys notices. And this has greatly improved our ability to pay our subcontractors and our suppliers as fast as we possibly can. So I think our contract says that we'll pay you within 5 days, and some of these people are getting checks the next day or the day after. So nothing's perfect. I'm sure that we probably have someone out there somewhere saying that maybe it took us a while to get paid, but this is what we're doing to try and make it happen. So that's kind of the gist of My Assistant. You can use it to send all sorts of notifications internally and externally. We kind of have some test cases that we're working on, like where we can send notifications if a cost code goes over the budget on the cost side, or maybe it goes over the cost projection. And you can set it to send a notice when it's a penny over, or you can set it to send a notice when it's a percentage over, or when it's $1,000 over, however you want to design it. And it actually comes with a lot of tasks that are already set up, and you can kind of go through these and get great ideas for yourself, like vendors on hold, or vendors missing 1099 information. This is kind of a good year to be able to use this one. And there's a lot of different tasks that are already built in here, and so some of our tasks have come from ideas out of here just by kind of looking through and seeing what they have. And I guess you can see, we don't have the service management module, but you can see here it looks like this does work with service management also. So that's about it. I think that's all I have for everyone that I wanted to present on, and I guess I'm here for questions if anyone has them.
So I have, thank you, Brent. I have a couple of questions I think that have come in. Tom, and actually before I get into questions, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take some webinar back here for a minute.
Okay.
And I want to go back here because I have some questions about the audio pin. So again, if you guys look at your control panel for the webinar, this is my audio pin, so you can't use it. But your personal audio pin number will be listed here. This only works if you're calling in by telephone. If you're on speaker, you won't see this. So if you're calling in by telephone, you have to enter the audio pin number this way. And it would be pound your number and then pound. If you're on computer speakers, you cannot speak unless you have a microphone. So if you want to ask a question, you need to dial in if you don't have a microphone on your computer and you're using your computer speakers. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. Tom, let me see. Tom, I don't see that you're, I still can't unmute you, so you either are, you don't have your audio pin or whatever, but Tom wants to ask a couple of questions about the cost to complete.
Okay.
Brent, one of them is, please define cost to complete and cost at completion in the forecast report and the difference between them.
Okay. Well, cost to complete and cost at completion, if I look at my spreadsheet, maybe I had bad terminology in there, but they are two different things. Cost at completion is the total cost at the end of the job. Cost.
I made you presenter again, by the way.
Sure. Okay. So let's take a look at this spreadsheet real quick. And again, I might have bad terminology in there, and if you caught my bad terminology, then thank you. Cost at complete is the total cost of the job. There's two different ways that you can update information, or two different ways that you can run these reports when you're looking at your completion. You can tell Timberline how much more cost until the end of the job. In other words, it costs $5,000 through today, and we're going to spend another $5,000 for a total cost of $10,000. That's cost to complete. Cost at complete is, it doesn't matter what we spent or what we're going to spend. The total at the end of the job is the $10,000. So you're either going to report the difference between what you spent and what you're going to spend, or the total overall. That's the difference between the two. And you're right, I have bad language. So really this should say current cost at complete, replace cost at complete. So we report on a cost at complete basis, not a cost to complete basis. Thanks for embarrassing me. No, I'm kidding. Thanks for letting me know that that my language was bad. And again, that's kind of a piece of me taking their sheet and repurposing it for what we do. So I just kind of missed that at right there.
Okay, one more follow-up question from Tom. In the forecast report, when more costs occur after a given forecast, how does Timberline handle the previous forecast? Well,
okay, so because, again, we're not using the dates here, we're plugging in a bucket, there is no previous forecast. The way that we do our cost at complete, we disregard any forecast before this one. Once this is updated, this is the Bible, and this is what we go by. There are reports and other ways to do cost to complete forecasting that you can actually analyze prior entries, but you have to use the miscellaneous worksheet screen, and you have to use, it uses the transaction date and actually creates transactions. But we don't do it that way. So I'll tell you who's an expert on that. Like, of course, I think everyone's favorite expert, certainly mine, is Jackie. and she could probably answer the question on how to do that best, but we've never really done it based on the dates. We've always just done it based on the bucket.
Okay, that was the last written question. I'm going to unmute everybody. If anybody else has any, hang on a minute, any questions? Hang on. So if it turns out I'm getting too much noise, I may not unmute everyone. But right now we have everyone who can be unmuted is unmuted. So if anybody has any questions, please fire away. And while you're doing that, I'm going to launch a little two question poll here that I think everybody will find useful. So let me launch the first one. So if you all have on your screen a question that you can check these little boxes, if you could respond to that with your mouth and just click on it. You all see the poll questions on the screen?
If these are all offline and we don't have enough space.
All right, so I'm going to close this poll and I'll share the results with you. Okay, so it's an interesting little tool here. Everyone can gauge who has the tools and who's using it. I'm going to hit that because I don't think we're getting a lot of information. All right, one more question here, and this I think will be an interesting one. And so the question is, did Brent's presentation today, did it spark some new ideas for how you can use these tools in your company? You all could mouse into your replies on that. All right, I'll give you just a little bit. All right, I'm going to close this poll. You guys are done answering, and I'll share the results. Here we go. Well, Brent, it sounds like Office Connector was probably the most intriguing so far. That's awesome. All right, thank you all, everyone. We are going to send out a survey after the, so you can evaluate how things went for you. We appreciate you when you get that survey and email. If you could reply and let us know how we did, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you all very much for your attendance today. We're closing the webinar. Thanks a lot, Brent. Really appreciate your efforts and your time on this. It was awesome. Oh.